If everyone can please stand for prayer. God our Father, we are all your servants. We trust in your mercy and love. We trust also in your guidance. Direct the meetings of this council of North College Hill to make good decisions for all the people who live in our city. Give all members of this council wisdom and insight to know what is best for our city. Help us to be fair and just in all our decisions. Bless us all to do the very best that we can. With your help and guidance, we pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the first Monday of the month, October 7th, 2024, council meeting. Mr. Hedger, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Orm,
Here.
Ms. Gaston,
Here.
Ms. Alexander,
Here.
Mr. Wilson,
Present.
Mr. Davis,
Here.
Ms. Underwood.
Do you want to?
Madam President,
Ms. Alexander?
I would like to make a motion that we excuse Ms. Underwood from tonight's meeting.
Madam President,
Mr. Wilson?
I'd like to second that
Blanked on
motion.
your name. Totally blanked on your
that's okay. Well, I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor from Ms. Alexander and a second from Mr. Wilson to excuse Ms. Underwood. Thank you. Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Orm,
Yes.
Ms. Gaston,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion pass, 5-0.
Thank you. Next, we have the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Madam President,
Ms. Alexander?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve tonight's agenda.
Madam President,
Ms. Gaston?
I would like to second that.
I have a motion for Ms. Alexander and a second for Ms. Gaston to approve tonight's agenda. Mr. Hedrick, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Orm,
Yes.
Ms. Gaston,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion pass, 5-0.
Thank you. Also in your packet for this evening, council, you have the minutes from the Monday, September 16th meeting.
Madam President,
Ms. Alexander?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the meeting notes from September 16th.
Madam President,
Mr. Wilson?
I'd like to second that.
I have a motion on the floor to accept the minutes from the September 16th meeting. The motion was made by Ms. Alexander, second by Mr. Wilson. Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Orr,
Yes.
Ms. Gaston,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
Mr. Hedger, do you have any communications for this evening?
Yes, Madam President. I did want to give, I did receive a notification from Ms. Dukestein of her resignation on September 30th. I did forward that to council. Additionally, I did also we received an additional scanning quote from Access, and we also received an updated quote from Mountain Iron, where they reduced their pricing to where substantially Access and Mountain Iron are very close in price, within about $500 or so of each other. We have had trouble getting a third quote. We've reached out to 3 other vendors and have not heard back. We've reached out numerous times over the past month or so, and we just haven't been able to get another quote. I think that's either due to the complexity of the scanning process and the organization of it as well. Seems like we might be limited on the amount. So I would ask council if we could move forward with one of the quotes provided, so we could start this project.
Mr. Hedger, so because you are so deeply involved in this, do you have a recommendation for council?
I do not have a specific recommendation. Each of them provide the same services and have attested that they would provide the same services with scanning, organization, and providing back electronic copies that are searchable.
Okay. Have you forwarded those,
I have.
both quotes?
I believe I forwarded them. If not, I can forward again to council.
I feel like I only saw one, but
I believe there's
I could have.
one now in your packet, but I can
Oh.
forward them both to you.
Okay, no, that'll work.
Okay.
Is
So if-
any of this time sensitive?
No, their quotes are not time sensitive, but they can be reissued after 30 days. So technically, we could get a different price in 30 days.
Where I was going with that is if we should assign this to a committee.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask next.
Okay. It's kind of,
That finance or more of a rules, or is that a rules and public policy because it's
Yeah.
dealing with the
That's-
charter
That's
and
what I would
everything?
think too. Rules and public policy.
probably.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
I will let Ms. Underwood know. We are moving this to rules. All right, is that it for communication, sir?
That's all I have.
Thank you. Next up, we have reports from council committees. Actually, I don't think anyone's met since the last one, have we? City Community Development and Recreation.
Madam President. Yeah, so, City Community Recreation Development met on September the 9th, at, I think, what was it, 7 p.m.? We discussed, Ms. Claire gave us, her recreational, report. She did inform us that there will be a new quiet area for the Fall Fest for the children, that might have sensitivity to the noise or not. We discussed the approximate amount of people that visited the car show, which was 2,000 to 3,000 people. September the 14th was the 513 relief bus. I did, as a council member, was able to stop by and check out the bus. I thought it was a pretty cool idea. was a conversation about the September 21st from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. recycling program. Okay. Mr. Hoffman and I also spoke about the 3-year trash plan, which Ms. Zorb actually asked Mr. Hoffman if we can actually make that happen within a year. So I think we'll address that more as we go along. Food Truck Friday, once again, ladies and gentlemen, every first and third Friday of each month at the 1500 block. We are still in works with the Party in the Park, still planning. I did reach out to Mr. Blaylock in regards to the football team. And there was no new business, and there was no old business or new business. I apologize. And the meeting ended at 7:28.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson?
The next time we meet,
Oh, I apologize. That is
will be on
the
14th.
14th. Yeah, so our next meeting
Are we
date.
closed Columbus Day? No? Is the city closed Columbus Day?
No.
Okay.
Are we?
I didn't know. It is?
So what would be that Tuesday?
It's gonna be that Tuesday.
All right. So the next meeting date is going to be October the 15th at 7 p.m. Thank you, Ms. Alexander.
Thank you. Next up is Budget and Finance. I don't think Budget and Finance has met since the last council meeting. Our next, although, and I do need to speak to Ms. Dukestein, though, because she had requested that we hold a special finance meeting on October 28th versus October 14th. So I'll need to get together with her on that to find out how we're proceeding there. So stand by on what our next date is for the finance. Next up is Rules and Public Policy.
Madam President,
Sir?
I did just want to provide some clarity on the date. It has been changed since she was the chair at the time, so if the new chair or vice chair intends to change the date, we would just need to then reschedule the meetings and cancel the prior one, so it is changed. So,
Got it. Thank you. All right, Rules and Public Policy. I don't think they've met since
The last council
the
meeting.
last council meeting either. That next meeting will be on October 15th also. That would be the same for public safety. Are there any ad hoc reports? None? All right. Next is administrative reports. First up is the mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Zorb. I won't be long because I see we have a full audience tonight, and I'm sure we have a lot to get to. I just want to touch on a couple of things. The first being, as we all know, the senior center has been used in the past for voting. So this year is actually, they set up the night before. So I would ask that council, I have been in touch with Mr. Graver. He's looking for another location. You would possibly have to relocate because they come the night before to set up. So your scheduled meeting is that evening when they would set up. So I'm sure he'll touch base with you if he has not already, but that date, so for voting, the meeting would not be held here. Or you can switch the date, whatever council chooses to do, just keep that on your radar. I just want everybody to know that next weekend is homecoming. I have not heard if they're having a parade. Have you, Ms. Alexander? If they
No,
are,
I
please go out
haven't.
and support. It's typically between 5 and 6 o'clock. So that's next Friday. I'm not sure what that date is. The newsletter should be going out this week, if not earlier next week. So that's the second one for this year. Also put on your calendars the Fall Festival, which is October 26th on Goodman. I believe the time is, oh my gosh, 1 to 5. Correct me, is that
I
correct?
wanna say, that sounds
About right?
about right. I have to look at my.
Mr., while she's looking at that, Mr. Wilson did not say the date, but the next food truck is the 18th, from 4 to 8 or 4 to 9?
It's 4 to 9.
4 to 9, so come out and support that. The last thing, Mr. Hedger passed out the FOBs, the applications, make sure you get those back, so if you need to get in the building. I do understand that some council members have other meetings that they attend outside of this particular meeting. If that is the case, you may want to indicate on there that day and that time so that you can have access to the building. And last but not least, since we won't be here, I don't believe any other time before voting. Everyone, I encourage you to get out and vote. And that's all I have. Ms. Alexander, did you have a time?
1 second.
Is, what time?
From 2 to 5.
2 to 5? I thought it was longer.
That's what my last September
Thank you.
26th says.
Oh, and if you could give me those key fob applications before you leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Does anyone have any questions for Madam Mayor? Next up is the city administrator.
Good evening. I'm going to apologize. Council, you have a report. The financial update, budget update is not able to be included yet because we received new budgeting software or accounting software, and somehow I have been locked out of it. They're not sure what's going on or why it's me specifically, so I didn't want to give you anything outdated that you've already received from Janetta, plus she's kind of going to give you a little bit different analysis from the finance standpoint versus budget. So I will send this to you. Hopefully Wednesday is when we have a meeting at 11 a.m. with this gentleman over the software. You will get an update. This does exist. The mayor has seen it. You're welcome to come view it afterward. I just don't want to give out a copy that can't be subject to open record if it's not completed. So one of the first things I'd like to touch on, Mayor Nichols has kept me extremely busy, which I'm grateful for. This has been a great experience so far. But we unfortunately have ran into some situations. We had some incidents that none of us are happy about, and it's very sad, and I think we all want to support the school. Obviously, there's a greater discussion to be had there, and that's really not my place to discuss. But we did have some issues with response. So with department heads, with Mayor Nichols, and moving forward at a certain time when it's appropriate to bring in council, we can discuss kind of crisis communications on a community level as a whole, because we want to make sure that everybody is receiving the same messaging, accurate messaging, and in a timely fashion. So I have been discussing that with specifically fire and police. Coming out of that, the same thing in regards to the hurricane. Obviously, we were subject to some pretty nasty weather. I think we're all very grateful that we were blessed with far less devastation than some geographic regions. But still, with that, there is a process for cities to be able to go through, and normally all cities have an emergency management plan. I had a couple of people ask me how I know that. Well, we have to have one because FEMA won't give us disaster recovery funds if we don't. So this does in fact exist. I think unfortunately through the transitions we've had here, because there has been quite a few changes with leadership, we have maybe kind of lost sight of where that is. The county should definitely have a copy of what we're supposed to be doing. They have like a greater county-wide one, and then we have one for the city. So our goal now is to obtain that. I've talked to both police and fire. Mayor Nichols was involved with that discussion, and we're gonna review that and make sure if there's any updating that needs to be done. Typically, counties are going through a hazard mitigation plan update every 5 years anyway for FEMA. So if it's not been updated recently, that update's coming soon. I will update you all on what I find out by the next meeting. We recently discovered that we have a generator shortage in the city. I do know that, not FEMA, Homeland Security at the state level will often, after a disaster, have funds available to purchase generators. So I've already talked to the mayor, the fire chief, and police chief and asked them to all be ready and kind of waiting, so that way if those funds do become available, we can immediately put in. We have to have one for our emergency operations, but we also need to have one here. We should have 2 locations if we have a major disaster. Typically, you use a school or a church for the first location, one that's got a large gymnasium for shelter. The school, I think we need to work with them on kind of their practices with that as well, to make sure we're all in line and together. And then we should probably have this as a secondary location. That's one that you don't advertise for people to visit, but it's where you would bring folks who might need medical attention. It's kind of your triage place. If we have somebody who needs oxygen support with electric, if we have no electric access, that would be kind of a place where they could come here, and it would be quiet, it would be cleaner, we could kind of control the environment a little bit better for them. So keeping that in mind, we will be looking at generators. This week, just some quick updates on some general activities. I have met with our liability insurance. I only got to talk with them briefly. Janetta, our finance director, and Ryan, our human resource specialist, they met with him, and I'm following up with a management letter. I will let you all know what is in that management letter, because there were some corrections that need to be made. Right now, until I get the full response done and let the mayor review it, it's not going to be open record, but it will be soon. I will make sure council has a copy of that as well. We met with Center for Local Government to discuss our health insurance pool. We've had a couple issues in the past. We're working to make sure those aren't a problem in the future. Those can cost the city a great deal, if not remedied. So we are working on that. We are also participating in the Center for Local Government salary survey, which is how we can find what cities comparable to us are paying their employees, to make sure that we're always remaining competitive and keeping our awesome employees here with us, and hopefully attracting, as we need to fill spaces, we're attracting some great new folks. As far as administration goes, we are working on onboarding and exit procedures. I'm trying to streamline the public records request. We have everything from police reports to EMS runs coming through our public records request. That should actually be separate functions, so we're going to work on kind of presenting that in a different way on our website for ease of access. We have reinstituted department head meetings. Those are going to be regularly scheduled. The first one went very well. The Hinkle, I'm sure this is going to be brought up. Just so you know, Janetta has done a wonderful job. We appreciate Ms. Dukes-Dean's support. That is one item left, and I believe that she reached out to Mr. Hedger today, Janetta, asking for, we need minutes from when they were approved. It would be the appropriations and the tax budgets for 2023. If she didn't, I can follow up afterward to make sure we know what we need, but it's one item, and that's all we have left. We have a current review of basic budget management because we have several new department heads. We want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So basic, just kind of budget 101 with everybody to make sure we all understand how we're functioning and nobody is overspending or unaware of some funds that they have to tap into. Let's see. Meeting with the Hamilton County folks next week to discuss CDBG, which goes back to discussion of the roof here. I can fill any of you in that would like to know more about that, but it's not recommended to use it for this roof, mainly because the timeliness of it. This roof is going to fall into further disrepair. We are looking, or I did see that the CIC and planning and zoning meetings are coming up. I don't know if there was like an issue with my email address, but I didn't receive the invitation, so I'm sorry. If I had known, I would have been there, so I apologize to anybody who was expecting me to be there. Nobody had reached out, so I'm sure it was just like a strange communications glitch. And then back to code enforcement. The last time I said I was sending you a report, the reason I did not was we had developed a plan to address code enforcement. We're in a strange situation where code enforcement, for some reason, there is no position for that in our city positions. We were going to try to fix that by working with what we have within the parameters of our current departments and what exists. So up to date, we always do nuisance abatement through Public Works. The goal was to just make that an overall nuisance assessment, and all nuisance calls, which are the ones that are like high grass, those types of calls, would just be handled, assessed, evaluated, and addressed by Public Works, which is still the plan. We had planned to use, the police department is hiring a neighborhood resource officer for the next fiscal year, and the goal was to have that person work on providing resources to our individuals that we want to support that might be having issues with their property. That goes back into the idea of cooperative or strategic compliance. A long time ago, code enforcement became a thing where we could use it to cite property owners and make money, and that is a thing of the past. Our goal is hopefully to one day not make any money from code enforcement because we don't have any issues. Now, that's pie in the sky, and I'm aware that that's probably a long time from now. But we have property owners that aren't as responsible as they should be. We would like to hold those people responsible with citations and fines. But we also have quite a few people in our community that might have an issue because they are temporarily disabled, they're on fixed income, single parents, a litany of issues that would make it difficult if we saw that their soffit's falling off or they need to replace a window. So instead of further perpetuating poverty, further perpetuating financial difficulties, depriving people of the ability to build generational wealth, our goal is to find resources for them, whether it be, I've heard that we've got people working cooperatively. We got somebody over here, which is, I'm so excited to talk to who that person is. We have many resources in the greater Cincinnati region to help folks, like the 513 bus, bringing them in is already like a good start. We can help people out instead of punishing them for running into problems as they try to have a nice property and lend to the community's health and wealth. We can help them. And that's how we build relationships and become better neighbors. So that is the plan with that. The only issue we've ran into now is, and this is what happened with kind of moving forward, code enforcement, we were gonna go ahead and work with it within the fire department. That isn't really the best practice anymore. It should kind of be its standalone within administration. The person should just be here. Fire inspections and code enforcement inspections are not the same thing. We shouldn't approach them the same way, and honestly, they're not received the same way. Code enforcement officials have a hard way to go. We definitely want to make sure we have someone going in there that knows how to talk to people because it can become kind of an upsetting situation. With that, we were going to try to work within the fire department. We thought we had a plan, and unfortunately, both individuals that we thought we could work with are no longer willing to take the position. I think that it just didn't fall in line with their goals. It's not that they weren't willing to be team players. Our fire department folks have been great from what I've seen. I think they just have other goals and they're working towards retirement, and we want to support them in their endeavors. So with that, I will need the next council meeting, I'll be bringing forward something in order to determine how we can hire a code enforcement officer. And we need to get somebody hopefully who has some experience, because that was something else we weren't aware that we thought everybody had different levels of training, and that's not necessarily the case. The software I'm familiar with, but as far as execution, we need to get some folks in that have a little more experience. I did find some trainings. We have that stuff ready to go for the other two individuals that would be participating in this. Public Works has now re-centralized all building maintenance to them. We've had this kind of lag with procurement for repairs, major repairs to buildings. So we have now re-centralized that to Public Works, and we have some movement on roof repairs and some other issues that we've ran into with our properties. Collective bargaining for fire has been completed. I'm sure that Mr. Dieters will have an update on that. Mr. Wilson, I need to reschedule with you on a parks visit. I had planned on visiting the parks, and I can't remember what happened that day. We've had several unexpected things pop up over the past few weeks. So that was kind of the highlights. I'm sure that you have questions, so I'm happy to answer whatever for you.
Well, I have one right off the bat.
Yes.
So when you, a while ago, when you first started this update tonight, you mentioned the shootings, the unfortunate shootings that we've had, and you mentioned something about we need to work on our crisis response.
Yes.
I want to dig down a little bit on that. Are you saying that the police did not respond in time, or are you talking more along the lines of communication?
Crisis communications. Our police, from what I understand, did a wonderful job. I'm so pleased with.
I just wanted to
everybody
clarify
with that.
whether you meant response
Yes.
or communication.
I
That's all.
apologize for not articulating that
All right.
well.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I was there and I saw the police in action, so that's why I was curious why you were saying the there was a slow response because I saw an immediate response. And so it was, I had a conflict in my brain as to what I heard versus what I had seen.
And just to clarify, it was a delayed response coming out. There were responses coming from different agencies and different entities within the community. And I asked specifically for the police department to hold off until I could come up with an actual community response or like a response from the city, because I wanted to make sure that we didn't lend to any confusion as more information was determined to be accurate.
Thank you for that, because there was
Yes.
communication coming from numerous places that conflicted.
And just so
Say
you
it
know, I
that way.
did review footage before I wrote anything. Like, I actually went through the full gamut to make sure that I had the correct information before anything was drafted. And Chief Cheney and I worked on that together, so I appreciated his effort on that.
Thank you for that.
Madam President,
Mr. Wilson?
yes, quick question. What information came out? Like, I'm trying to figure out, because during this whole situation, the emergency information that I got did not come through anything but the website. And so I'm trying to figure out what kind of emergency communication went out.
We issued a social media response and a website response. We are working on an alert system to alert during any kind of situation. It's not reverse 911. I can't remember which one Chief Cheney was looking at, but we do have one of those. He, I believe, will be updating and working with the committee on that. But communications were coming from various places in the city. We did not speak to news media because news media had already been addressed. And some of the information was found to have maybe been slightly different than reported. We did not want to we didn't want to create any more confusion by speaking out differently, so we didn't speak to media. If we needed to speak to media, I would have probably addressed that myself, or asked the mayor to address it with her. There's a point where you have to be cognizant and be thoughtful when you're working with multiple agencies in a community. Like, if more than one group is affected, it's not just the city, it's all of us. Sometimes information is discovered as you go. And it's really important that we don't discredit a source just because they had different information when they spoke. So I'm trying to be very diplomatic in my response.
I was just trying to figure out where the information came out at, because during the emergency, all the information that I got, during the emergency, all the information that I got actually came from the website, as far as updates for me. You know, I was on the street, our power was out for Friday until 12 noon Sunday.
Are you speaking about the hurricane issue?
Yeah.
You didn't get my emails?
No, I didn't receive any of them. If I have,
I sent it to all of council. I sent email. There were
sent-
2 or 3.
I received them, but as far as any, standing, update emails, I didn't see any of them.
Okay,
So,
that is because we don't have a system to do alerts as far as like citywide alerts, which is what we're working on. And like I said, Chief Cheney and Chief Plackey, I will let them, that's not my bag. So I'm gonna let them talk to the committee about that to make sure, and I'm sure council wants input on that. So I will let you all handle that, but we do have, it is known that we need to have a communications plan in place, not only coming to discuss with media, coming out as far as what we're presenting on our website or in socials, but also with alerts that we send out to you all. So that is in the process. Obviously, when these things happen, we do not like them. They are not good. It is sad. We empathize with everybody affected. But if anything is going to happen, we need to find something in it. And we now know where we can improve our communications during crisis situations from a city standpoint. So we're going to take it and we're going to try to do something with it that's positive for the community.
thank you.
Ms. Chamberlain, I'd like to point out, there was an app that we tried to use a couple years ago, and I want to say it was called My City Pocket, maybe?
I haven't heard of that one, but
Remember
that
that one?
sounds,
Yes, I'm
It would have
sorry.
been 5-ish years ago.
It was 5-ish years ago, and it was, actually, I just deleted it from
Is that
my
what it was
phone.
called?
It was called My City Pocket, and it would, administration or the city administrator or the assistant can put in a message, and it would shoot out to residents. The people who used it enjoyed it, but it's just a matter, I mean,
It would certainly need some administration, but it's an idea. Just thought I'd throw it out.
so what it is we would send a text message, and anybody who has the app and who has downloaded it, it would go directly to their phone and then scroll across. You can get so many messages. I think it's like maybe 4 or 5 that you can put out there. That might be something that we want to consider doing again, but just getting it out there that people can download. The app is free. You don't have to pay for the app. If you have iPhone or Samsung, Android, yeah.
I would suggest if you had things that you liked about that one and things that you didn't, maybe kind of writing that stuff down so you can discuss at the committee meeting and discuss with the chiefs. Our goal would be, if that one worked, why wouldn't we just keep using it if it's already kind of set up and maybe it was just abandoned because it had been a while since anything requiring push alerts had happened? Or it may be an opportunity for us to find a more efficient system if one exists now. There's several that you can use, and I think that they probably all have different kind of positives and negatives associated with them. Cost being one thing, obviously.
It was very inexpensive, and I think the issue is that we have to be consistent
Okay.
when we do things.
Madam President,
Ms. Alexander?
can you provide a little bit more information? You had mentioned that the CBDG funds would not be used for the roof. Can you
Yes.
give just a little bit more detail on that?
So, kind of the short version of what was found out. So when I first was told about this, I was asked if it was feasible to use it for the roof. Yes, 100%, you can use it for city properties. However, what I wasn't aware of is where we were at in the process with those funds as they were obtained for, or the grant was written for use for the splash pad for phase 3, I believe. The idea to use the funds for this building, I think, was a necessity. We have a roof leak here. It needed to be fixed. Unfortunately, this roof leak is it's deteriorating. And with the current weather situations we've had, it did not get better. CDBG requires public comment. There is a notice for advertisement period. It's like 7 to 21 days. It has to be you have to put notice in the actual print paper. You have to have a tear sheet. There's a whole process. By the time these funds could be used and approved from the county, it's going to be 3 to 6 months. In 3 to 6 months, the cost of the damage that is going to be from the further deterioration on the building is going to be far more exorbitant, and the cost-benefit analysis kind of threw off with that. I wasn't aware, when first asked that question, where we were at in the process, and because we were already ready to kind of use these. So these funds are ready to go for the splash pad. Does that answer your question?
So this would be in addition, because we had a public hearing already for these funds.
For the splash pad?
Well, to
remove
remove it and to be used for something else.
Okay, but you have to actually have a hearing for what that use is gonna be. I think this goes down to, and I appreciate, please understand as I say this, I am not putting anyone down. Our employees work very hard. They've all experienced a lot of change recently, but CDBG grant funds are extremely difficult to administer. The county does the bulk of the work for us because they obtain the funds and they then allocate, they designate funds through a smaller sub-grant process. Because of their role in this and their kind of directing our employees through the past, I don't know if it was fully understood what had to happen here. I just happened to be a certified administrator of CDBG funds. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have known either. It's not something that nobody should just on a Saturday be looking up how to administer CDBG funds, please. It's very boring. So it just, a misunderstanding and what had to be done. And I'm going to apologize because I feel like I should have caught sooner what the issue was. But the minute that I understood where we were at, that's when I kind of stepped in and said, we have to kind of change course with this. And so I'm going to take the blame for that, and I apologize. I just didn't realize where we were at in the process.
So are we on track with, we've already had a hearing to have the funds removed from the splash pad. Are we on track to go to the next step for whatever we choose to use these funds for? We need to now have an additional hearing, is what you're saying?
I don't believe if they are going to be used for the splash pad, even though you had that hearing where you could do that, that was a could, not a shall.
Right.
So you can still use those. You have everything in place. You followed protocol that it can be used for the splash pad. If you would like to move forward with using those for another qualifiable use, you have already conducted the public hearing necessary to start that process. But it is going to be a process that's going to take about 3 to 6 months. So my concern with that is just be thoughtful, because the county has to have these funds expended by a certain date, which means we have to be ahead of that in expending down those funds so they can do their paperwork. It's for what they call closeout process. I believe they're looking at the end of next year. So this would need to happen relatively quickly if you're going to change course on that. I advise finishing out a project that's in its 3rd phase. That is how I advise. I am not the end-all be-all of things. So if you choose to do something else with it, I'm happy to assist you in that process. But I'd like to go on record saying I advise just using them for what they were intended.
Madam President.
I think Ms. Alexander had a follow-up
One more thing,
first.
so would we need to undo what we did?
No.
Okay.
So what you did was set you up actually for now you actually, the world's your oyster, right?
Okay.
So you can still use it for the splash pad, but you've also set yourself up to move forward if you choose not to with the next process.
Okay.
The big takeaway from this was just the roof is not the way to go just because of timing. Although I do think it was great that you all took that path of consideration in a different situation and with less damage to the roof. That would have been feasible. So either way, great job.
Mr. Wilson?
Go ahead. She answered my question.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Thank you for that report.
Thank you.
Next, we have the law director.
Madam President, I just have 2 quick things. One is we did reach a tentative agreement with the part-time firefighters. We should have it ready for discussion and approval at the next council meeting. Just waiting for a few things on the final document to get put together. We're pretty happy that we came in to a salary range which was close to what we had talked with council about. So they seemed very pleased with where we ended up. So, and I think council, and my understanding is from what I've been told by the people that were there, it was well within our budget. So we shouldn't have any problems with that. And it will allow us to continue to retain and attract part-time firefighters as well. And the only other thing that I have to ask for is a very brief executive session this evening after council. If someone could make a motion for it, and it would be to discuss the investigation of a city employee. Or I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
I have a question.
I'm a little worried by the way you looked at it when you said you had a question, but go ahead.
So I was going to call executive session already.
Okay. You can just add for more than one reason.
That's where I was going. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Okay, so next up we have call of members. I think I'm first on the list. So the main thing I was going to talk about was the location change for Election Day. I did get a chance to talk to Mr. Graver prior to this meeting. We tossed around the idea of using the Clover Nooks Proctor Center. He was going to contact them to see if we can use that, or will, if not, well, I don't know, start checking off boxes of other places to look at. Oh, and we have an open council position now, so if anyone in our listening audience, wherever the camera is, if anyone out there would like to join us on this wonderful team of council members, please send an email to askcouncil@northcollegehill.org. Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Gaston.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. I just wanted to say great work on all the neighbors that got together during the power outage and helped one another. There were 4 or 5 families that were able to be helped. They received food and different resources that they needed. It was just great to see the neighbors get together and come up with solutions to help one another. And that's it.
I'd like to put in a personal plug for you. Thank you so much for, I know you went way out of your way to gather food and deliver it to people, so thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you. My pleasure. And also Miss Kathy for helping me find those families, because she helped also. And I appreciate it.
Takes a community. Thank you
Yes.
both. Next, Ms. Alexander.
Once again, I would like to thank Ms. Gaston as well, Ms. Curitan, and also, what's that, the sports complex, the purple building? I never can think of the name
It's
of
called
it.
the Flock.
The Flock. They offered their services for charging, anybody who needed to charge any type of electronics. And I would like to just thank the community as a whole for coming together in our time of need. And I also, I guess I'll wait for new business because someone has already reached out to me about wanting to be on council.
Okay. Mr. Wilson.
Yes, first of all, I want to say thank you to all the residents who stepped up and looked out for one another. That's the example of family. We are a family here in North College Hill, and I want people to stop saying we're not, because we are. I've seen a great example of it, during these last trying weeks for North College Hill. I want to say that it touched my heart to see everybody reaching out to one another, making sure that their neighbors was good, making sure that other individuals in the neighborhood knew that they were there and they cared. That's family, people. I want to keep up the good work. Thank you to all the firefighters and officers that stepped in during the times of need. Like I said, again, these shootings at our schools are unnecessary. It shouldn't never happen. We as a community can step up and make change. And like I said, if we start showing these children that the individuals that's here in the community that leads the way care, they'll understand and it'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Davis?
Yes. And once again, I'd also like to carry on and thank everybody, our residents, people who helped, people who received help, our public works employees, everybody. Once again, that is community revolution in progress when we look out for one another, when we look at one another. And in that same vein, I want to speak again about Motion NCH. That's a new group, a new initiative from the planning commission, expanding engagement, and the initial meeting for Motion NCH is going to be Thursday, November 14th at 6 p.m. That's at Greater Grace Christian Ministries, 6717 Hamilton Avenue. Once again, Thursday, November 14th, 6 p.m., Greater Grace Christian Ministries, 6717 Hamilton Avenue. And that's it for this. That's it for this week. And I look forward to us all continuing to push this process forward and continuing to collaborate and work together and build this community. Thank you.
Mr. Davis, thank you for that update. I have a follow-up question, though. Greater Grace, is that the building back behind the dry cleaners or the red brick next to the dry cleaner?
They're the same. They're the same kind. It's the church has both of them, and I gotta ask that and I'll be clear about that. I'll have a better answer on the 21st.
Thank you so much. All right, next we have remarks from the audience. Mr. Hedger, has anyone signed in?
Yes, Madam President. First, we have Carolyn Johnston.
Please step to the podium, say your name and address. You have 3 minutes, and let me get my timer ready. I'm not Mr. Graver and wasn't prepared.
My name is Carolyn Johnson. I live at 6541 Hamilton Avenue. And my first question is, where's the party in the park? Just tell me the park.
Madam President.
Yes, Mr. Wilson.
So we're still working on it, the details.
And I also heard somebody else talking about visiting the park today. Well, that is why I'm here. We have a park across the street from here that was 3 years ago was a total disaster. And 3 years ago, I started to improve that park. For the new people, that's Wise Park across the street. It's in memory of a Jewish person that owned that property over there. CIC, Chamber of Commerce, Jewish Federation, myself, and another citizen put money into that park. That park has become a place where adults can sit. It's not a park for kids. But the sad part is, there's an ordinance that park is to be maintained by the city, and the city has not maintained it. Now, I did speak to the mayor about this at our CIC meeting, and she was going to get 3 bids for people to clean it up. You don't need people. You need hands, and you need hands right now. And I want to let you know that I spent an hour and a half over there today with another citizen and pulled weeds in that park. I then came over to the city and asked for Public Works to come clean up the park, that mess we have of all the weeds laying around, to clean up the garbage. The garbage cans are so full, no one can put anything in the garbage, to cut the grass that's about 6 inches too big, high, and nothing. I left at 12. Public Works never came over there. There are piles sitting in that park right now. I will be there again and pull weeds. It's hands. Just, I know a kid that has a business that he could go over and clean that for a lot less than you looking for hiring a person. You want to hire somebody? I just worked an hour and a half to say, hire me. I cleaned up what I can, but I can't do it. I'm not youthful. My age is against this. So I'm asking the city to please follow through with maintaining that park. There's been close to $30,000 put into that park. One Jewish man, and I know a lot of you people don't know this, paid over $5,000. One person to put the fence around that park. And the city has no pride in it. It is a shame what it has turned into. So I'm asking to have that park cleaned up before winter sets in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could,
Yes, Mayor.
the CIC meeting was on September 26th when Ms. Johnston brought that to my attention. On September 27th, I spoke with Mr. Huffman, who within that same day had reached out to one of the companies. By October 4th, he had met with the other 2. The process is to have someone who can go through all of our parks and to make sure that they are de-weeding and maintaining all of the properties. We know with most things we need to get 3 bids, so that's where we are. I cannot speak to today. I did not speak to him today about which one came in with the lowest bid or if they had gotten back to them. Ms. Johnston is correct. It is the city's responsibility, and I cannot speak to as to why. I do know that they were going over there cutting. Ms. Johnson and myself have had conversations about a weed. I don't know a weed. I don't garden. So I can't say that the gentleman, the Public Works, knows the difference between a flower and a weed. I certainly don't, because I don't garden, as I said. But we are looking into taking care of it. The idea is to have someone do it professionally more regularly so that we can be sure that it's done properly. So we don't want our Public Works to pull up a flower when they think it's a weed.
Madam President, if I may. Speaking directly to that, so Mayor Nichols did immediately come speak to me, I think within a few hours or half a day of that conversation. Just for those of you, I know Mr. Wilson and I have had a conversation. Parks are very near and dear to me. Green space planning, very important to me. I'm a huge fan of passive parks, so the adult parks, as we call them. I had been told about Weiss Park. I believe that what date was the 27th, or day of the week? Was that?
Friday.
Thursday, and I think on Saturday we had a hurricane, or Friday we had a hurricane. So I'm gonna go with that's probably because we did have to have citywide cleanup, which is probably where part of the delay was, because I know I also spoke to Public Works. So I do apologize for that, but when we have citywide like debris cleanup, that can cause injury. It puts other people in peril. We have potential of additional downed wires. We have to address those issues first. It's not that we don't value a park. We have to look at what's going to be the first and most detrimental issue in the city at the time. Also, weeding is something that I will say this, my first foray into all of this, I was like, just go weed. And then I got cited because you can't just go weed as Public Works. There's actually a whole process, like using Roundup at Public Works is not a good thing. We have to be OSHA certified for weeding. It's a process. So keep in mind, once again, we have a lot of transition. I'm not saying that any of this is okay. I just want you to understand maybe why right now we have not given the attention and love to that park that it deserves, but not to say that it's not going to be coming. It's very important. I ask that you give us just a few weeks' time because we are trying to recover from the weather we've had. Prior to that, we had a drought. If we mow during a drought, you're not going to have any grass, you're going to have dust. So that's another concern I think we had. So I think that if you just give us a few more weeks, you're going to see that it is addressed. The mayor had asked for them to start looking into procurement for grass cutting. We can also provide some more attention, but our Public Works crew is light. They also have now had all of the building maintenance returned to them under their house. So once again, there's just a lot of change, and I appreciate the request for attention to detail. Nobody is going to neglect the parks, but I think unfortunately when you went to the mayor about this, it did happen to coincide with literally 24 hours later, we had, winds and rain and a pretty devastating storm to deal with.
Madam President.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes. So when it comes to this trash in our parks and in our community, it's really a pet peeve for me because we live here in the community. So I'm not accepting of any trash being left in our community that we can actually control. Our Public Works is doing the best that they can, and it's individuals out here that are also out here participating. Y'all might not see them, but I have seen individuals out here trying to pick up and clean up. So just be patient with us. Give us an opportunity to address these things, and I promise you guys within the next couple of weeks, within a month's time, y'all start seeing the change. Just be patient.
Thank you. Mr. Edger, has anyone else checked in?
Yes, next we have Dan Brooks.
Thank you, sir. Please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Dan Brooks. My address is 1517 Oak Knoll Drive, and I am proud to say North College Hill, Ohio. I am here this evening representing the Planning Commission. We have two other members here, Ms. Brooks and Mr. Hall. Mr. Hirt couldn't be here tonight because he's at another meeting, was trying to get here, but he's not here, so. Let me just address something we just heard on the park. And I'm not being argumentative, except that that park, Weiss Park, is the name Weiss may or may not mean something to somebody, but it's Isaac M. Weiss, the founder of American Judaism around the world. His farm was right there. His front door was right there. And that's what that park is. And that's some of the heritage of what we all have as citizens of North College Hill that we get to share in. So that, and as Ms. Johnston indicated, there was a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and money put into getting that park together. And the mayor knows that. And but the one thing I must challenge, I get the hurricane, and I get the drought, and then I get the heavy rain and all this other stuff. But the weeds that are over there, it didn't happen in a week. It didn't happen in 2 weeks. It happened in about 4 or 5 months. So I'm not here because I think Public Works Department, I think, is great. They have been great in the past, they're great now. And I know they got challenges of lack of manpower. But, you know, it's just got to happen. That trash has been there, you know. And so, and I appreciate what you said, Mr. Wilson. We'll see. We hope you're right.
Oh, it's going to happen.
Okay. Now, back to the reason I'm here. First of all, a while back, I would hope you all received our recommendation to adopt the master plan. I'm asking again, on behalf of my fellow members of the Planning Commission, where is it? What's the status? Anybody know?
I believe it was put into the Rules and Public Policy Committee.
And when will it come out?
Don't think it's even been discussed yet.
Okay. Well,
I'd like
let
to
me
point out that your 3 minutes are up. So
Please?
I need you to
Hurry up?
expedite. Yes.
Okay.
Please, sir.
Okay, have you taken any action on the recommendations that we sent in August? I got copies if you don't have them. Sure.
Mr. Brooks, would you care to leave one on Erica Underwood's
Sure will.
slot right there? Thank you.
These went to the president. These went to the president of council, so I'm assuming that he can get you copies. But again, this was in August. Just bring a little heads up to the future recommendations coming forward. We'll have some recommendations on some land that's been discussed in Planning Commission, and the future of Clover Nook School building. Because I know that, and that goes I'll hurry up here. There's some things coming up that's going to require zoning, that's going to require a lot of conversations with private businesses here. We are called a planning commission because that's what we do, we plan. But planning, and we could talk about it, but this is the book that we paid. How much do we pay for this? The master plan.
The master plan,
Yeah,
I want to say it was $150,000.
$150,000 roughly, right? $150,000. We don't need a $150,000 book sitting in a closet. We need somebody to take action on it. Somebody. Okay, we can get into that later because my 3 minutes are up. So, that's it. We need a little bit of a fire here. Okay? And I would like to hear back. We are expecting to hear back. This is October So our next meeting is November, so maybe we could hear something by then?
I'm
There's
sorry,
7
sir, could you say that
recommendations.
could you please tell me your anticipated date that you would
Well,
like to hear back from us?
we asked for something to happen by January 1st of 2025 in our recommendations, knowing that you got a lot of stuff to do. Well, I get it. But, you know, it's like that whole thing. If you don't push, it just kind of sits there, kind of like the weeds. Okay?
When is your next meeting?
November 6th, I believe.
Thank you.
It's after, you know, we do this.
Madam President.
Mr. Wilson?
So is this the final? This is no draft or nothing? This is just the final recommendations from your committee, right?
That's the recommendations. We all voted on it. We all signed it.
Can I get a?
Sure. Now, you may not agree with them, but that's,
Oh, no.
this is our,
Like I said, I just want to, so these are the final ones. This is no draft or anything, right? Okay, thank you.
I'm assuming you're asking about the recommendations and not the master plan. The master plan, we urged you a while back to adopt it with the understanding that we all had some problems with it, but for the most part, it's okay. So, that's that. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. November 6th? All right, straight. We're all going to be, I just got reminded by Mr. Hall. We're all going to be out of town on November 6th. Most of us. So it will not be on November 6th. You got a reprieve. You can probably go to the 13th. You got another week to kick it around.
You for sure it's going to be the 13th?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have something.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Hedger, has anyone else
Yeah.
signed in?
Yes, Madam President. Next we have Ms. Dukestein.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Dukestein. Please state your name, address, and 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Arias Dukestein. I live at 6842 Marvin Avenue, North Collegeville, Ohio. I gave counsel and have extra copies for those of you in the audience who are willing to, or who would like to look at this documentation that I gave them. But there's a piece of legislation on the agenda tonight, and I wanted to remind council to look through. And so on the back sheet of the packet that I gave you is the piece of legislation and is the intent for the municipal building at 1500 Galbraith Road. And I just want to make sure that you know that it has intent. And so Mr. Brooks spoke about the comprehensive plan. I know that I resigned as of September 30th, and I had not received the comprehensive plan, not from the president of council or had it been spoken of in any committee. But if front page, what you have is the assessment from the company. It's, what's the company called? Sorry, it's in the paperwork. The company is called Burgess and Nipple. That is the original assessment, and if you go down to the third paragraph, I'll read that. It says, based on the observed conditions, it is our professional opinion that the existing building, both east and west wings, does not meet the current accessibility standards in the several areas. Common path of the sorry, I'm watching my time too. Common path of the egress, restrooms, drinking fountains, kitchenette, and break areas will all need to be reviewed in detail. So it kind of goes into depth, and if you see it, I'm gonna skip through and allow you to read. But it down here it says $8.2 million is a high estimate, and $5.5 million is a low estimate to restore the building. And there has been some chatter that the building wasn't worth restoring. And so then I have also put in your packet, there is, this is one of the four, and I want to say this, quote, so this was the intent when we were looking at this. We did not get bids because we have not decided whether or not the building should be repaired, but this is the information, or restored, where our intent is to restore it. That's what the legislation is about. And so we need to look at a comprehensive amounts that show us exactly comparatively what we're looking at. How much it's going to cost us going forward, and we need to compare the value of what we're going to get. So when you're thinking about this piece of legislation, this quote here addresses, it literally says, and I know my time is up, it says, in an evaluation of the space at North College Hill administrative offices in consideration of the Burgess and Nipple assessment, this quote was given to us with consideration to this assessment, and it comes in at $3.2 million. And if you look in detail, the supporting documents behind that go step by step of everything that they said. It comes under $2 million under the lowest estimate, and they give us everything that we need to what it would cost according to the quote that Ms. Icky got, and you will see on there that they addressed it to Ms. Icky, not the quote that we got as council, and the quote that was given to her by the original contractor. And that is all. I just want you to have that information in consideration of your piece of legislation you have before you tonight.
Madam President,
Thank you, Ms. Dixie.
Madam President, if I may,
Sorry, couldn't figure out where you were.
this is just hearing a few things and not knowing everything about this yet, but I'm very familiar with brownfield remediation sites. I manage the Northern Kentucky Brownfield Program. I created it. So this is near and dear to my heart.
Could you tell us what a brownfield is?
A brownfield is any site either perceived or known to have hazardous materials on it. That would include lead and asbestos or mold. That perception and or knowledge means that the site becomes blight, unused, vacant, not used to its full potential. Yes, thank you. So clearly that's where we're at with this. I'd like to point out, number one, any kind of bid that you received is going to be null and void here very soon, or estimate. They will change. They're probably going to come in a little bit better just because costs are starting to come down from when that happened. That's because whenever you're dealing with any kind of hazardous material, the longer it sets, the more, the closer you come to having to have another, they call them phase 2 assessments, but that is like the on-site tangible assessment where they actually go in and check air quality. They check to see if the asbestos has further deteriorated into actual particles. I am not an environmental engineer, so I don't need to get any further into that, but I do know from the administrative side that that assessment will likely have to be redone. I would say that the estimate to rehabilitate, to mitigate the hazardous materials and to rehab the building will come in slightly less, just because the cost of materials has went down, and I do know that. I've been pulling costs for other cities and projects for the past year. With that being said, you do have a unique building that has a lot of potential. I understand there's always a cost associated when you're going to go into a project like this. It's a large cost. Sometimes the value in something is not the value of it being finished. It is what you can do with it and the long-term value that it brings to the community. I've worked in a lot of communities now that have wanted to redevelop sites like this. And if that is something that you all are interested in, I can help advise in that situation. I haven't read through the kind of suggestions made with the comprehensive plan. But if not, you have character in this community where that building is. You have homes that are not newer. There's a certain charm and appearance that goes with that part of the community, and this building fits with that, and the building is large enough that it could have additional uses that could generate potentially additional income, but also serve as a place that becomes a communal center and you want to always build off your city center. So this was without looking at the comprehensive plan, without any suggestions. So I'm going to say that I stand that I may be corrected after I look at that. But I do know I went in that building myself. The building is not in the best shape. I'm going to be honest. Is it the worst thing I've ever seen? Not even remotely. This can be fixed. I got excited when I saw that building, and I'm not going to be here, so I'm not thinking about my awesome office I would get to have, although I was like, there'd probably be a pretty cool one in there for whomever. This is about the fact that most cities are absolutely like begging to obtain a property like what you have there. I have only had that happen once that I can think of, where I got to work with a community that had something that nice, that large, that had that much potential with it. And I know that cost seems like a lot, but keep in mind, there are brownfield funds that you can obtain for cleanup through grants. There are some options for, depending on what you want to do with that building and its end use on top of city offices, you can move into a phased approach, clean up the first part for where the offices will be, and then you move into a second, third, potentially fourth phase. And with that, you can obtain funding. There could potentially be EDA funding. There could be CDBG as a great funding source for buildings that are publicly owned. But there's a lot of opportunity to find funding and create a really unique, cool project that serves this community for the next 50 years. So I am here to help and advise on whichever way you want to go, but I did want to say that just because I heard the tone of where that was going, and I was kind of like, just please consider the fact that there is something that can be done with the building, and it can serve the community, and it is financially feasible. If it wasn't, I'd be the first one to tell you not to touch it.
Madam President, if I could just say, just real brief to follow up on that. One thing I think you have to pay attention to is that the cost for remediating the asbestos you're going to have whether you tear the building down or whether you rehab it, because you have to get the asbestos out before you tear it down. So that cost is a fixed cost. And the other thing about that is that all that resolution does is just say you're going to keep looking into it. That's all it says. That doesn't bind you in any way. It doesn't tell you have to go out for bids. It just says we've got information that says this might be feasible. We're going to continue to expend the efforts and the resources to look into its feasibility. That's all that says. Just so you're not making, if anybody's worried about making any kind of commitment, it does not do any of that.
Madam President.
Mr. Wilson.
So just to address that 1500 location, since I've been on board, I've been taking a look at that location. I've been on it 3-4 times. The building is rehabable. We definitely could save the building. Right now, we have to be patient and move wisely as far as saving the building to make sure that it fits completely within our budget. If we can actually save some money on rehabbing that building, it's a bonus. But just from the outside looking in, it's worth it.
Madam President.
Mr. Davis.
Okay, I got a question, and I'm actually petitioning the audience just because we've got some of our longtime residents in the building. Now, Clovernook /1500, it was built also around the same time as Josie Becker Elementary. Yet Josie Becker Elementary was demolished. Was there any reason that this building is considered rehabable, but Josie Becker was not?
Oh yeah, Mr. You asking me?
I'm asking anybody that would know.
Well, I think you also have to think about what your intended use of the building is. It might have been cheaper if because you have cost per square footage, whatever you're building. So if you're building a hospital, it'll actually cost more per square foot than it does to build a residential home, right? Because of what you have to have in it. So, and also I know that school project had something to do with commission funding dollars from the state of Ohio. So sometimes they won't allow you to rebuild a building or rehab a building if they feel it's too old. They'll say, we won't give you the money for a rehab, you have to build new. And so there's a lot of different issues that could have been played a part of that. I don't know the answers to those, but I just know that it's not that simple to say building A and building B are the same building, because it depends on what use you're going to use that building for and where your source of funding is coming from. But I just know, and I'll just piggyback again on what the city administrator said, if you come up with the right plan and you have a building that has city uses, administrative uses, community uses, all those kind of things, and given the socioeconomic status of North College Hill, I think you'd find that there would be a significant source of grant money available, both federal and state, that North College Hill could get his hands on with that building if you come up with the right plan. So my opinion, for whatever it's worth, I would piggyback again. I think it's worth to continue to explore it and not give up on the building. And that's probably different than where I was 8-9 months ago. But after seeing that report,
So I have two questions of my own. First, Mr. Dieters, if this legislation is only to look into this further, why is legislation needed?
I don't think you need it. I think
Because, I mean, obviously there were already quotes that were obtained prior to legislation. So why is legislation needed at this point in the game?
I don't necessarily know if it's legally required, Madam President. I think it's a matter of whether or not council wants to put forward its intent and where they want to go, because a lot of things would have to happen, right? Like you'd have to look into it further. It may require you to spend some money to look into it further, to get some more in-depth analysis, to do some planning to what it could look like. Maybe you hire some consultants to help in that process. So I feel like right now it's just been kind of stable because there's really no one's actually said what's our vision. What do we want to do? What are we trying to do? So I think that maybe when it was introduced initially, it was explained to me, it was just to say, yes, this is something we want to continue to look into, and we want to make a commitment to continue to look into it.
But that kind of sounds like you flipped the script a little bit, because this says intent, and now you're talking about spending money on a consultant. So there's differences there.
Well, you would have to still approve a contract if indeed that happened, but it would be kind of senseless to go out.
We don't approve contracts. We only approve the money.
Well, you'd have to approve it in the budget, right? But if it would be kind of senseless for the people who work for council and for the city to begin exploring those things and taking the energy and time to do that if they're not sure if their council indeed wants that to happen or not happen, right?
I think there needs to be a lot more information provided before we know whether we want to invest $5 million, $8 million, especially the sustainability part.
Absolutely, right. But I feel like there's no guidance from council to the administration as to whether you even want to look into how feasible it is or not is. Because if that's not easy, it sometimes requires you to spend money to find out if it's worth continuing to spend money.
Sure. I'll buy that. But to go back to your question, Mr. Davis, we have the fortunate audience member who was the mayor at the time that made the deal, or helped make the deal to obtain Clover Nook School. So, Mr. Brooks, do you have anything to add to that? I'm not going to tell you a whole lot more because I know how long you can talk.
Okay, I will try to be brief. Good questions, all of you. That building, I really loved your comments because that was all said about 15 years ago. When that building was acquired by the city for a grand total of $0, and in exchange for a 41,000 square foot building and 3.5 acres of land, we switched it out for approximately 3/4 of an acre, maybe half acre of land. So at the time, it sounded like a pretty good deal. At the time, it needed repairs to the roof. They weren't done, even though the council at that time, none of which you were here, so you're off the hook, said it was too much money to spend, $200,000 for a roof. $200,000.
Mr. Brooks, can I hold you there for a quick
Sure.
second? So I
was on council at the time, and we did spend, it was
Oh, you're
more
right.
than.
You're right.
There
Oh,
was,
that was-
it was
but-
more than
okay.
200,000, and we fixed one half of the roof.
Right.
With a new roof.
Right.
The other half was, I want to say 58,000, and it was supposed to be patched. So both sides were attended to at that time.
Right, and let me back up. I'm talking about when we first made the deal with
Okay,
the school. This is before.
Then I wasn't there then,
Right,
sorry.
yeah, because at that point, that discussion did come up about the roof. And council said, well, let's just, they were talking about patching the one half and not doing anything on the other half. It needed to be done. Well, subsequently, fast forwarding, there's been a lot of leaks in that building, a lot of mold, everything, so it disintegrated. The point that we want to make is now as planning commission, so I hope that gives you some idea as far as what happened as far as the school, the building, and where it went and all that. Everybody good on that? Planning commission's looking at the same thing, but we're looking at the holistic picture. What else does it affect? Now, yes, with $3 million, may be a pretty good deal to fix the building, but then again, what else can you do with it? What else can you do with the property around it? What's possible? In our world, now in planning commission, we play a what-if role. That's why zoning and stuff comes to play. I don't have an answer right now. That's what's kind of cool about this, because when I was on that side of the table and arguing with council, not arguing, I didn't argue, right? The council never argues. They debate, right? Well, we were debating the issue. The point I made then, the point I'll make now, because it's the same point. You got 3.5 acres. You've got 41,000 square foot. But the real joy of all this is that you've got it to make a decision to what to do with it. If we wouldn't have gotten the building, we wouldn't be here talking about it, because you wouldn't have a choice. Now, I think you asked, why did they tear down Becker and not that one? The school tore down Becker because they wanted to put a baseball field and fields up there. That's what they wanted. Procter & Gamble came in and they did those fields. They also came in and in one day turned an empty school into a city center, which was amazing, but that's a whole nother story. But the issue here is, I think that the real good thing is that you have an option. You've got choices to make. They're difficult choices. They're very difficult choices. But, and as far as the planning commission, we want to know more also, so that we can advise you in the best of our collective knowledge. I was going to say wisdom, but we'll go to that. To give you some kind of an opinion on what else you could do on the bigger picture. Because sometimes, I know I'm an architect and I'm a planner, okay? So, we focus in on, we call it the red door syndrome. Focus on what that color of that front door of your house is going to be, and you forget looking at the whole house. And that's easily done and very often done. But that's kind of where it's at. And I hope that answered your question. They tore that. The school, the question came out, what are you going to do with Clovernook? And the superintendent says, well, I don't know. I said, well, we could sure use a community center. We could sure use a place where people can get together. We can sure use a place. I mean, we spent thousands of dollars, and they're around here somewhere, on plans for a whole new community center right where Italian Ed is now, that whole block. We had indoor pools, outdoor pools, gymnasiums, running tracks, city hall, everything. But looking at it back now, we should have done that, because it was the whole total package was around $8 million, and that we could have done that with the world prices, the high end on the thing. So, but at any rate, that's what happened on that. So,
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President, just for clarification's sake, and I appreciate, I don't know if that was directed at me or Mr. Dieters about, you were saying that 15 years ago.
Well, he knows it, though.
I was gonna say, I'm not as young as I look. Been around for a minute. So we own this building, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so and the reason I'm asking, I think I've missed out for a planning commission to be kind of exploring different uses for one of our properties. What was the request for them to do that? Like which committee made a request for them to go into this review process and provide options? We should have options, you should be assessing it. Nobody's ever showed me that, and so like now I'm having a harder time understanding, and I feel like if I could help more and advise better if I had that context of what request was made and put into Planning Commission to make choices and present options for city-owned properties.
I'm not sure that council directed anything to the Planning Commission.
Oh,
Madam President.
oh, okay.
I don't know.
So from the time I came in, it's just been word of mouth as far as everybody's that had a current vision of the building, what they thought it should turn into as far as the building, the facility being there. The only thing I want to say, and from my end, as far as what I have been doing, I have had a roofing company come out and look at that roof. To be honest, from what they already gave me, that was the whole problem. From the inspection of the roof to now, when the repairs was done on one side of the roof, apparently it was done brand new, physically brand new roof, put gravel and everything on top. The opposite side, they decided to patch it, which caused the problem because all the water that was running off the new roof running over to the old roof, and it's finding the holes that were on the roof. So that's what, perpetuated the situation over there. But as far as the usage, the knowledge was that we were going to try and put back everybody that was in there for right now.
Thank you, Mr. Wesley. Mr. Hedger, is anyone else signed in?
Yes, Madam President. Next, we have Ms. Curitan.
Good evening, Kathy Curitan, 6718 Devonwood Drive, North College, Ohio, 45224. Let's see here. So I guess I'll start with what's most recently happened with the city and our preparation for emergency response. Unfortunately, a lot of North College residents lost power for 3 days, and the intersection of Hamilton Road and Galbraith Road were negatively impacted. From my understanding, there were multiple car accidents. From my understanding, our police department, our fire department, our city buildings were all without power. That's very concerning. And when you're looking at emergency response, so there is another hurricane brewing right now in the Gulf, and they're expecting it to be worse than Helene. Does the city have a plan in the event the city loses power, police, fire lose power, residents lose power? And I'm actually going to ask my questions, then have my seat, and then I would ask that Ms. Chamberlain and council. I felt like there was a significant breach. I had a communication with Ms. Duke-Steen the morning of Saturday, just trying to understand what our city was doing for its residents who you all serve. And we heard from no one at all from North College Council or administration, except for Ms. Duke-Steen and Ms. Chamberlain, regarding providing resources for our residents. Ms. Gaston reached out, and we fed. Well, she personally hand-delivered, and we make sure our residents are covered. But that shouldn't be just she and I. There should be others on council who you all serve, residents, and our administration providing resources for the emergency. So I would like to know, do we have a plan in place in case Milton does the same thing Colleen did? The next question I have is, how does the city plan to engage its residents in decision-making processes, and what opportunities exist for a community input on upcoming projects, i.e. the city center? You all are having healthy discussions tonight, but I haven't heard anyone ask the citizens what they would like. And I think the master plan, it polled citizens, whether it was 100, whether it was 1,000, whether it was 10,000, I don't know. But I think it is important to know, what do the citizens of North College Hill want to see in North College Hill? Additionally, what strategies, and this question is for our mayor, what strategies are being implemented to support local businesses and attract new investments in our city? What would make someone want to come and put their business in North College Hill? What are we producing? What are we providing? And then lastly, and this is actually not just for the mayor, because she can't answer that by herself, surely not. So all of council, I would like maybe one or two, you all select, what are we doing to bring new business to our city? And then lastly, I would like to just piggyback on something that's already been discussed, so you do not have to respond. Thank you. But I believe that this master plan that's been sitting since August, I'm shocked that you all haven't discussed it. And I'm not reprimanding, but I am shocked that if we spent $200,000 on something, why are we reinventing the wheel? If they've done it, let's review it. Let's consider its implementation. Let's take the recommendations that are provided. So the charge to council is to, A, make sure that you all know you are here to serve us as citizens. And I am personally just slightly disappointed that we didn't hear from anyone regarding like, hey, I'm available. What can I do to serve? I know that we are all out of power. What can we do? And Ms. Chamberlain, she and I had 2 conversations. And our police department, I know you don't want me to say it, but they're short-staffed. And we can't just expect them to do every single thing to protect our city. I need council to do more. Thank you.
Madam President.
Ms. Alexander.
Okay. A couple of things. I know that when they were putting together the master plan, they did have meetings for citizens to, to come, but you can't drag people out. And it was being publicized. Please come. We want your input. Number 2, I think Ms. Dukestein touched on it. I never received a copy of the master plan in August. So when he said that they sent it out, I believe him, but I never received it. Third, as far as the extending help, I may not have advertised it, but I made sure that I went to my neighbors. My mother did not have electricity. She lives out of town. She's on her own. She's elderly. She didn't have electricity for 8 days. She lives in the country. So not only did I, my neighborhood, but, I have family. I have a great-grandmother who was out of power. So I think everybody was a bit stretched. It was a horrible accident at the end of my street. I was on the scene. What can I do? I think just because you may not see it advertised, that doesn't mean that people aren't, doing, what they can. That's all. You can always do more, but it's not always advertised. I can't speak for, everyone else, but number one, I want to say I did not get the master plan. So when he said that, I was like, did I? No. And then when Ms. Dukestein verified that she didn't get it, so.
Mayor, would you like to respond to strategies for new business to the city?
Sure, and also I would like to piggyback on what Ms. Alexander said as well. I know that day I talked to several people. I had a communication with Ms. Zorb, Ms. Dukes Dean, of course, me and Ms. Chamberlain was on the phone hot all day, as well as Chief Cheney. So initially, the city, prior to the event, had made arrangements with the school district to use their property in the case that something had gone out. Now, we talked earlier about what the communication looks like as far as that is concerned. I'm not sure how the police put that out, but that situation didn't work out. When that fell through, we made arrangements to go to the flock. I do understand that I heard someone earlier say that people were able to go there fine. I know it was questioned to me if they could come here. We did not have any electricity. Of course, we know that generators were hot. We were able to find a generator, but we ran into another issue there as well. So it wasn't that we weren't, myself, as the same like with Ms. Alexander, it wasn't broadcast, but I know I was, you need anything, texting people, calling people, what do you need? Ms. Gaston had emailed, and we talked a little bit about the flock, but they had closed. I'm glad to hear that you were able to deliver the next day. So I think everyone does what they can, and it's just not all, you know, a lot of times we like to, what you do in the dark is rewarded openly, right? You know, we don't need for somebody to say, oh, you did that, oh, she did that. I think everybody was concerned and still are concerned because I'm sure people lost food. Mm-hmm. When I came in, I didn't call Mr. Hedger, but I knew he had been down in Asheville. So I was concerned the whole time, wondering, like, is he there? He had just missed it. So I'm grateful that he got out. So I just think the concern, everyone is concerned. To be honest, I have not looked into Milton. I just roughly saw it. And I'm sad to hear that as Ms. Curitan said, it's supposed to be worse. I did not know that. So that does bring different things. So then we do need to talk about what does that look like. But keep in mind, we still may run into the same issues. We can't, if we go out the same way, we do need something different, but we still can't run a generator here. Who's not to say that one?
I just want to clarify, I'm not referring to what you do on your personal, because that's your personal. Whatever you do on your own time and dime, that's you. What I'm referring to is the city's response. So as a collaboration is what I'm directly referring to, not what you personally do for your neighbors or what Ms. Alexander has done for her community. I am specifically stating what the city's response was in regards to making things available. So, for example, if my neighbor is not connected to anyone on council or administration, how will they know where to go, what to do, and what help is available? That's what I'm referring to.
So as I stated earlier, I can't speak to how the police department put out what the resources would be in that situation. As I stated earlier as well, we had collaborated to make sure that citizens, if they needed things, that they could go to the high school. Just as anyone, what I do for the city is what I do for my neighbors, just making sure that whatever needs, if we know that the need is there, I know people will contact you because of the relationship that you have with them. So whoever contacted me may not contact you, may not contact Ms. Zor, Ms. Alexander, or anyone else. So you meet those needs accordingly. So if you can direct someone there, for the city, we did what we could with the resources that we had. Now, it wasn't easy. It was not easy because we didn't know that we were going to run into the fact that all of our buildings went out. All of our buildings went out. We tried to run a generator from here, couldn't do it. Had a police cruiser outside running the generator the best way that we could. So going forward, what do we do then? Do we downsize on a generator? Maybe that's the option. Maybe the generator that we had was too much for this building and we need to get a smaller one. I can't say because I hear all the time people say a lot of our people are not on social media. I'm sorry, that's not where I get my news from either. So, you know, and everyone doesn't have a cell phone. Everyone doesn't have internet to it. So I don't know what answer you're looking for that. If you don't have a cell phone, you're not on social media, and you don't have electricity, you obviously not on the news. If you can go somewhere to charge your phone, if you have a phone, and so it comes by word of mouth. Like we said, going to your neighbor, going to people that you know. Hey, do you have it? If you don't, the same way with Ms. Gaston taking things out. So it's just, at that particular case, it's word of mouth. We will do whatever we can to assist our citizens, but we have to know that the need is there, not just, I'm sorry, I think Ms. Alexander wanted to say something, but let me.
I think ultimately, I think Ms. Chamberlain nailed it when she said they're putting together an emergency preparedness plan. This was something that no one could foresee.
Never be prepared for a surprise.
And, I mean, we all did the best we could with what we could at the time. I mean, when Hurricane Ian came through however many years ago, I was out personally without electricity for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. The other side of the street had electricity. So I walked over and talked to my neighbor, Larry Weingartner. I said, hey, Larry, can I run an extension cord from your house to my house? I'll pay you for the electricity. I just want to keep my refrigerator running. Perfect. So I kept my refrigerator running for 2 weeks. We grilled. We ate by candlelight and just did what we needed to do to get by for 2 weeks. What else could you do? So I'm just saying, at some point, this is not going to go over well, but at some point, there's an expectation that people help themselves. The Lord helps those who help themselves. And at some point, there is some self-ownership in this. And it's not always a flash on social media to figure out, hey, because just like the mayor said, not everyone is on social media. Mm-hmm. So not everyone is going to see that flash that says you can come up to the flock and plug in your cell phone. I mean, what I did at that time was I started charging my phone in my car. I'd sit in my car, I'd turn it on, and I'd charge my phone in my car. I mean, there's ways around it. You got to figure out alternative plans and figure out how to get through it.
Madam President.
Yes, Mr. Wilson.
I just want to say that it goes back to my statement earlier that North College Hill is a family, and that's how we supposed to operate as a family. Yes, we know that the technology, everybody is not into the technology, everybody don't have it, but if we continue operating as a family, it doesn't matter who don't get the message, because as a family, all of us got the message. So when one person got the message, the rest of us got the message. Let's operate as a family. Ms. Chamberlain made it clear that we did not have no up-to-date plan in place. We just don't. And this is the result of not having an up-to-date plan in place. So, thank you again for everybody that came out, that gave a helping hand to your neighbor, the police officers that went above and beyond to provide, the necessary locations, to Mayor Nichols and Ms. Chamberlain for getting out the information that was important for us to get out. I just want to be clear about this. I was sitting in the dark too. I have a whole strip of constituents that did not have power, and they did say, hey, well, what's going on? Well, guess what? I was able to tell them that the city was working on it. From the information that I got, from the communications that I had, I was able to let my constituents know that North College Hill did not forget about them, and we just had to be patient. But again, we are a family, and this is what family do. We go through our ups and downs. Now that we went down, let's find our way back up.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ms. Alexander.
And I think how Mayor Nichols was saying the City Pocket app, I think that'll be a wonderful way to get things out. I was able to get out information on if you or on assistance and you lost your food. I do remember that. I placed that out on the North College Hill website because I knew people didn't have electricity, their refrigerators were out, and I posted a direct link, and that's something that could be possibly put on that city app, That's my point. Providing, excuse me for speaking out of turn, and I do apologize. That is what I'm referring
referring to. I will not respond to say God helps those who help their own, because we have a community of senior citizens, and God forbid I will not look at this 85-year-old grandmother and say God helps those who help their own. So I don't operate in that manner, and that may not be the way that you wanted to say that. However, I just can't do that. I'm so sorry. However, what you're referring to is that app, just something to say, hey, if you receive what she's referring to, if you receive SNAP benefits, you can do X, Y, and Z to recuperate those. Those are the kind of things that I'm referring to, not what we do on our own time and own dime, but to say, hey, because there might be a significant number of people in our city who receive SNAP. To say, if you were lost without food for over 24 hours, you can reapply and they will give you the money. Miss Alexander, she most certainly posted that. Those are the things I'm referring to. What resources are available for those who were negatively impacted? Nope, you were out of power for 3 days, I get it. But now that power is restored, what can we offer our citizens to recoup any of their losses? If you have resources, that is what I'm referring to. Thank you. I'm sorry for using your mic.
Thank you, Ms. Carradine. I think we have talked about this topic enough. What else is that all of them? Mr. Hedger, do we have anyone else who has signed in?
Yes, Madam President. Next we have Andrea Brooks. Our Madam President.
You wasn't that far back.
Ms. Brooks, you have 3 minutes. Please state
I will
your
make it less than that.
Thank you.
Andrea Brooks, 4 Beach Knoll Drive, part of Planning Commission. I just wanted to add a little clarity about something that was mentioned about there was a disconnect. So I want to share ownership just give clarity in regards to the master plan. So my understanding, I'm almost a year into Planning Commission and learning how things work. And then when we had a hole and lost our city administrator, or city manager, I'm still learning our roots of connection and communication. And I will say this, I know that the mayor and Mary Jo had asked me about the master plan. So I just want to make sure that the why, when it comes to them, I think there was a disconnect with as far as communication on the final copy, because Planning Commission had made some recommendations because we saw some things that were missing. And yeah, so we were waiting for updates. We got those, but part of the disconnect was all of the stuff that was happening in the city. And I tried to send what I had. I was like, I don't know if it's the right thing. I did. It apparently wasn't the right thing. Tried to find it. But when you have holes and kind of a change of the guard, so to speak, some things, so it wasn't intentional is all I want to say, is that at least in Planning Commission and even in connection with the city, we've already started our process for tightening up our communication and kind of defining roles and methods of communication so that things aren't lost, because we did lose some time with that, most definitely. So I really wanted to speak to that. So it wasn't the fault of council or the city. And I'm looking forward to working with you, Ms. Chamberlain, for us to work with you. And I'm excited for all of the opportunity that we have to really improve and work together as a team and respect everyone's ideas, even though I'm like, tear down the old city center. I still listen tonight. And I'm like, I'm okay. I'm okay to have a seat at the table and a conversation and hear, as long as you give the why and things that make sense, as long as we all do. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, everybody, for what you do, and I've enjoyed the conversation tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Hedger?
That's it.
All right. Okay. I think we are finally moving on to legislation. Mr. Hedger, could you please talk to us about legislation?
Yes, third reading, resolution number 15, 2024, a resolution to proceed with expressing the city council's intent to renovate the city buildings located at 1500 Galbraith Road.
We're making a motion to adopt. Okay. Like to make a motion to to adopt resolution number 15, 2024.
Madam President,
Mr. Wilson.
I'd like to second that motion. Oh, yeah, emotion.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to adopt Resolution 15, 2024. The motion was made by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Wilson. Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Sorb,
No.
Ms. Gaston,
No.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion failed, 3-2. It's, the council charter states there needs to be 4 votes of affirmative to proceed with it. Yep.
Mr. Hedger, could you move on to the next piece of legislation, please?
Yes. First reading resolution number 16, 2024, resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies for certifying them to the county auditor.
Is there any discussion on this? I have a question. Is there any type of timeline on this that it needs to be passed by?
Madam Chair. Were you going to say something?
I don't know. I said, she looked at me and said,
I'm asking because this was not talked about in any kind of committee, so I don't have any background on it.
Mrs. Orr, or Madam President. I believe I received notification from Ms. Anderson that this did need to be passed at this meeting. I don't know if the administration could confirm, but that's what I recall.
I do believe, just from the brief conversation that I have with her, that there is some urgency. I would refer to Ms. Dukes Dean if she had conversation with her. Did you have a conversation with Ms. Anderson regarding the tax? No, yeah, I'm sorry, yes, for the tax levies. You did not? Okay. If you give me 1 second, I can look at my email to see if she said anything different in there.
Please. You know what, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't, you can't.
We don't have
pass.
6
I have
people,
5, yeah.
so it doesn't matter. Sorry, I didn't mean it to sound that way. Thank you for looking anyhow, Madam Mayor.
No problem.
All right, we are moving on to further remarks from the audience.
Mhm.
So, I'm frustrated with the president pro se, because you allowed people to speak past 3 minutes multiple times, and if you're going to deal with the issue, you need to deal with the issue in totality. In Budget and Finance, you specifically said that you were on board with this as long as we could present more evidence, but we're here at the voting table and you say no. Ms. Gaston, I don't think you have enough information to say yes or no. And that the intent is just to continue the research. So I want to challenge you all to do your homework. That's it.
Thank you. Let's move on to old business. Does anyone have any old business we need to discuss? New business.
Madam President,
Ms. Alexander.
due to our vacancy on council, I have been reached out by Ms. Chichester. She's interested in being a part of council. I've talked to her extensively. She has lots of experience. She works with the Urban League in neighborhood development, and I think it'll be very beneficial. I would like to ask her Is she still interested? Would you like to?
Actually, could I please hold you? That's kind of what I want to talk to Mr. Dieters about in executive session, is how we go forward with this.
Okay.
I need a few more parameters around it, because I don't know that we handled it the way we should have when Ms. Bruner resigned. You can certainly go up and speak. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to halt you there.
Please go.
Yes.
My name is LaTanya Chichester. I live at 8415 Carroll Avenue. I've been in the city of North College Hill almost a little over 15 years. I've raised all my children here. I even did a stint working at the school. My whole life is serving and working in the community. I also am here to say I want to be considered for Ms. Dukestein's seat, and also want to say thank you, Ms. Dukestein, for your service. Your work does not go unnoticed for our city. So I'm hoping to bring growth, positivity, and collaboration to our city. Ms. Zorb, you know I interviewed for Ms. Gaston's seat, or sorry, the seat prior held by Ms. Mary Duwall. So, yes. So you've known this. I'm here, I've been here, I've been active in my community. I've been present even before we moved here, even before we were hosting the meetings at the school, high school. I've been here at the city building. I had children attend Clover Nook, so I am North College Hill, so just wanted to say that. So, any questions for me?
I think you've said it all.
Yeah, you said
Thank you
everything
very
I
much
needed
for
to
your
hear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other items for new business?
Would you like to, do you have anything?
So,
So I just have a question.
What's the motion?
So
Yeah.
you're saying to hold off on the motion?
Right.
Is that what you're saying? And if,
I would like to talk to the law director first, yes.
Yeah, there's, I mean, what need? What need?
Look, so I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session. You can vote no if you'd like. How's that? All right.
Okay.
So I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22, to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of public employees or officials. And Mr. Dieters, what part did you need to add on to that?
It's in that same section, it's the investigation of a.
Okay, and the investigation. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
But you can do it, it doesn't matter.
Can we please get order in the audience?
Please.
Mr. Hedger, we have a motion on the floor to go into executive session made by Ms. Zorb, seconded by Mr. Davis. Could you please call the roll?
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Gaston,
No.
Ms. Alexander,
no.
Mr. Wilson,
No.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion failed, 4-2, or 5-2, so, excuse me, 3-2.
I would like to point out that Mr. Dieters did have a item that he needed to talk to us about. How would you like to proceed with that, Mr. Dieters?
Well, you could make a separate, it could be a separate motion just to discuss my item, then you have to vote on that too.
I would like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss the item. Can you get, what would your items to do?
Investigation of a public employee.
The investigation of a public employee.
You have to give-
Madam President,
Madam,
my bad.
Madam President. Do we need the full reading of the section?
No,
Okay.
because it's not legislation.
Mr. Davis?
I'll second.
Mr. Hedger, I have a motion on the floor from Ms. Alexander and a second from Mr. Davis to go into executive session to discuss the investigation of a public employee. Please call the roll.
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Gaston,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
All right. It is 9:46, and we are back.
So we need a motion to come out of executive session?
No.
No,
No?
we just need a
No.
motion to adjourn.
Oh, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Ms. Chichester to the vacant seat formerly held by Ms. Dukestein.
Madam President,
Mr. Wilson?
I'd like to second that motion. It is an emotion.
Yes.
I like to
It is
second
an
that emotion.
emotional motion.
That's right. It's an emotional
Because
motion.
we really care about getting this done.
That's right. But that motion, I second that motion.
Mr. Hedger, I have a motion on the floor from Ms. Alexander and a second from Mr. Wilson to appoint Ms. Chichester to the open position on council. Please call the roll. Oh, sorry. Discussion. My bad. Is there any discussion?
No.
So I do have a point of discussion. I think we need to, and this has nothing to do with anyone in particular. I think we need to throw out a net to see if there are any other individuals who would like to be on council. I think we have, 45 days? 30. We have 45 days. We had 5 days from the date you resigned before we could meet, which put us in today. And then there's 45 days from then, from which we have to fill the position, is what I believe the charter says. So I would like to throw a wider net to see who else was interested in the position. And with that, is there any other discussion?
No, I would like to vote.
Right, Mr. Hedger?
Ms. Zorb,
No.
Ms. Gaston,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-1.
Well, or
Madam President.
condolences, one of the two.
Madam President,
Mr. Wilson?
yes, I'd like to make another motion.
Is
Like to make hey, excuse me. Like to make a motion to have the city administrator do the research on the 1500 location for the restoration of the facility.
I'd second that motion.
There's a motion on the floor from
Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Wilson and a second from Ms. Alexander to have the city administrator look into the restoration of the 1500 building.
Yes.
Is there any discussion? So my point, I have a point of discussion, and that would be, there are no parameters around that, and I don't know that Ms. Chamberlain understands what her role would be, so I want to make sure that she would understand what her role would be if this were to pass.
At this time, because we're not discussing money, we're not discussing hiring consultants or anything of the matter, I'm assuming you were wanting me to write out kind of a step-by-step process and what would happen to mitigate the hazard and to rehab the building, and offer some options that could be used for end use that would potentially generate additional revenue or serve a purpose in the city, as well as some grant, like potential grant sources or funding sources. Is that correct?
Yes.
If there's something else, like, let me know. It's just,
I would just like to point out, at one time I had asked for an ROI.
okay.
Because there was a conversation around there could be recreational use. But then, when you have that, then you'd have to have more employees to support that recreational use. So I was looking for an ROI to try to understand how sustainable it would be. Because, as we all know, at one time, the city had a pool, and we couldn't sustain that financially. At one time, we had something as simple as a post office. We couldn't sustain that financially, so that went away. So I just want to make sure that before we go into that it can actually sustain itself.
Yes, I will offer several options and levels of functionality and potential for sustainability that would be self-sustained. Okay?
Madam Chair.
President.
President, I'm sorry. If I could, with the post office, I believe the post office went away because we were paying out more than what we were making with the post office.
Exactly, the
So,
sustainability. That's
yeah.
exactly my point.
But just so it's clear, we were paying our employee, but we weren't really reaping any benefits. The way that the post office was set up was that they were getting all the money, so.
Madam President,
Yes.
may I ask this of council for consideration in what you're asking me to do? The Planning Commission, I will openly state that tonight was a little bit strange with how that was presented. I'm not used to seeing a Planning Commission come forward making requests like that. However, they have dedicated some time and energy to this, and it also sounds like perhaps they have a slightly different vision than what was stated by the mayor, which means they've probably been discussing it in front of community members. Would it be feasible for us to have one community engagement session with them included, not to sway opinion, but to discuss ideas, options, and better present information, and then compile that for a final report? If that's feasible, I can tell you I can have this done probably by that first week of December. We can have a full report, including a community planning session. If the mayor is also okay with this, I want to make sure everybody is on board and okay with it.
Sounds good.
Madam President.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, so the clarity, basically what, will benefit us is if you can go in and do a thorough analysis of exactly how that building will benefit us. It's plenty of individuals got great ideas for their building and the use of it, but sitting down with the recreational department, we need to focus on those who are in the building right now. And that's our main goal, is to focus on that restoration of that building, because that building plays a big key to us. We don't belong here in the senior center. This is not our building. We're just using it until our building is repaired. So that's the focus I would like you to take into it, to see what is going to cost us, or the direction of repairing our building to get us back in there.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Orr,
Yes.
Ms. Gaston,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
Madam President,
Mr. Wilson?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Madam President,
Ms. Alexander?
I'll second that.
Mr. Hedger, we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Wilson and a second from Ms. Alexander to adjourn tonight's meeting. Please call the roll.
Ms. Orr,
Yes.
Ms. Gaston,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you. Speeding is over.